Stand by, Strider. Upon receiving your orders from the commander, you are dropped into the heart of Russia, armed with only your lightning-quick sword. Your task is to infiltrate the Red Army and return enemy secrets to your superiors. Your mission begins in Red Square, but after fighting off KGB attacks there, your clues lead you to the snow-capped mountains of Siberia to battle both the elements and the enemy. If you survive this icy test, your orders are to proceed south to the lowlands, where jungle tribes wait with spears and poison arrows. Now you must return to Moscow to face the Grand Master of the Red Army. It is vital that you get him before he destroys you, or the world will fall under Russian control. The free world relies on your success. That's right, viewers. We're a ninja fighting communism, I guess, in this game called Strider. For the NES, obviously, by Capcom in 1989. Please remember our last episode in which we talked about Daydreamin' Davy, which was released 3 years after this. Strider. Well, let's also say that Strider was released for several different consoles. Commodore 64, Master System, the ZX Spectrum, a bunch of different ones. It's a very long list. Now this was actually not based on the arcade version, but was produced in tandem with the arcade version. They were kind of side by side developed and blah, blah. Excuse me. So we had an arcade version, we had an NES version. There was a Japanese version for the Famicom, but it was never released, oddly enough. And the NES version is included in the 2006 Game Boy Advance compilation of Capcom Classics Mini Mix. So we've got this kind of dystopian future. It's like 2048, and we have a secret organization of high-tech ninjas known as Striders. And they smuggle, kidnap, disrupt, and demolish. You know, like ninjas do. We take control of Hiryu, the youngest ever elite-class Strider in the organization. We are summoned by the organization's second-in-command, Vice Director Matic, to assassinate his friend Kane, who has been captured by hostile forces and become a liability to the Striders. Instead of killing him, Hiryu decides to rescue him. He is successful, and also recovers a recording from Kane concerning a suspected criminal plot. Oh, no. With the help of his fellow Strider, Sheena, Hiryu uncovers a conspiracy between a certain faction of the Strider organization and an unknown organization known simply as the Enterprise, headed by a man named Facius Clay. I think Facius? Facius? I don't know. Okay. So, Mr. Clay is developing a mind control weapon named Zane. And Strider has to stop him. Now, the Strider games, pretty popular. This one, really not very good. It's buggy, it's glitchy, the controls are weird, the movement is floaty, the enemies are bizarre sometimes in that you think you killed them but you haven't. And it's excuse me. It's really not very good. The idea of it sounds phenomenal. And some of the other versions of this game are excellent. There's a Genesis version which is quite good, oddly enough, from someone who doesn't much care for Genesis games. It is really pretty fun. A lot more fun than this version. The arcade one, though, probably the best. This version was part of a three-way collaboration between Capcom, manga studio Moto Kikaku, and it included the Strider Hiryu manga. And then we had the separately developed arcade version. Unlike the arcade game, the NES version of Strider closely follows the same storyline developed in the manga, which involves Hiryu fighting against former Strider allies. Oh no. The Famicom version was first announced while the manga was still in serialization and was scheduled to be released in Japan following the collected edition of the manga in the fourth quarter of 1988. Excuse me. However, the Famicom version was delayed to a 1989 release before it was eventually cancelled. But the NES game was still localized for the North American market and released shortly after the arcade game, and was poorly translated. I don't know. This game got pretty high reviews. We would say if I were to take these two and average them, it would get a 7.8. I feel that's a little high. The story is good. The story is told in a good and interesting way. But the gameplay itself is what makes the game just like, ugh, to me. It's just really... This is not what you should expect in gameplay from a Capcom game in the late 80s. I mean, you really shouldn't. Because we had Mega Man and all the other games that Capcom had done previously that were better. So, I don't know, it's fun. It's worth a play. But if you have the option, play one of the other versions.